Hey there, guys. All right, today we are on to week 47 of World War II, July 20th, 1940. Good people on both sides. Hitler's peace offer to the Allies. Now, as you can tell, I am no longer sick and dying. So, well, no. Hopefully, that means quality is back to the norm, which still isn't high quality, but it's better than what it was when I'm sick. So, anyways, with all that said, let's just go ahead and dive into this episode.
Yeah, it's like he's going for the old boundaries or something. I mean, who's he think he is, Alexander? Okay. July 20th, 1940. Adolf Hitler has defeated all his enemies in the field, except one. He is now only at war with Britain and the British Commonwealth. To defeat them, though, he will need a plan, and this week, that plan is here.
Gasp. Surprise. No way.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is World War II. Last week, there was a naval battle off Calabria. The Luftwaffe bombed Britain, and Philippe Pétain consolidated power in Vichy, France. Here is what followed. On July 16th, Adolf Hitler submits his directive for the invasion of Britain. This is Directive number 16. He prefaces the order by stating, as England, in spite of her hopeless military situation, still shows no signs of willingness to come to terms, I have decided to prepare, and if necessary, to carry out a landing operation against her. The aim of this operation is to eliminate the English motherland as a base from which the war against Germany can be continued, and, if necessary, to occupy the country completely. The code name for the invasion is Seelöwe, Sea Lion. An air offensive is to begin August 5th. The invasion itself is to be on a broad front, from the east around Ramsgate all the way to beyond the Isle of Wight in the west. But no...
Jesus, that's... Hold on, let's take a looky here. Let's take...
From the east around Ramsgate all the way to beyond the Isle of Wight...
That is so... God, how... That's a horrible plan. That's like a... That's a horrible... That's too broad. Like, that's... as wide as an ocean, as deep as a puddle kind of thing. Because there's no way you'd have enough soldiers to and material to do a meaningful assault on all of those beaches on that wide of a invasion front, whatever you want the right word would be for this situation here. Right, like, I mean, we compare fucking D-Day. D-Day's just here. It's just here. This spot here. Along here. And that was like hundreds of thousands of soldiers.
In the west, but no concrete date is set for the troop landings. That is because there are conditions to meet before such a landing will happen. The Royal Air Force is to be defeated and demoralized by the Luftwaffe to the point that it won't be able to oppose a German channel crossing. The channel itself is to be swept of British mines and the Strait of Dover blocked by German mines. German artillery must dominate the whole coastal region between France and Britain. The Royal Navy must not be able to interfere in the crossing, so they have to be engaged in the North Sea and the Mediterranean by the Kriegsmarine. The home fleet must be either destroyed or badly damaged by torpedo and air
Okay, so it's never going to happen
attacks. So,
in any
the
alternate reality.
success or failure of Sea Lion rests on Grand Admiral Erich Raeder and Luftwaffe Supreme Commander Hermann Goering, neither of whom have the slightest interest or enthusiasm for such an attack, and both of whom do little to hide their opposition to it. Nor does Directive 16 provide for combined operational headquarters of any kind. Raeder even writes a memo on the 19th which states the Navy will be unable to accomplish its objectives. Goering does not like the idea of using his Luftwaffe for naval warfare, and this also means cooperating with the Kriegsmarine. Goering, though, can't stand Raeder, so cooperation may not be that easy. And the Luftwaffe's directives
Now, spill the tea. Why don't they like each other? Come on, give me the drama.
are that attacks on shipping or warships take a backseat to military targets. Okay, well, they don't use the word backseat, but that's what they mean, right? Goering's plan is to attack the RAF and gain air supremacy. His own directive from back on June 30th said, as long as the enemy air force is not destroyed, it is the basic principle of the conduct of air war to attack the enemy air units at every possible favorable opportunity, by day and night, in the air and on the ground, without regard for other missions. His thinking was that after this, they wouldn't need to invade because British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and company would be forced to sign peace. But last week on the 11th, Hans Jeschonek, Chief of Staff of the Luftwaffe, gave his order for coastal shipping to be targeted. Such targets are easier to find than inland ones, which is a plus, but also, when it defends, the RAF will then be fighting over a region where pretty much all of the German forces can take part in the fight. Another plus. And another one. The Germans have an air-sea rescue service. The RAF do not. This month, the Luftwaffe has been transferring air units to the European coast from Hamburg to Brest. By July 17th, they...
So Goering is now really at two mistakes here. Right? Depending on the legitimacy of whether or not we believe that Goering made that statement to Hitler about the Dunkirk encirclement, right? Where he said, let me handle them or whatever, let the Luftwaffe do it. And then he failed at that, if that is true, which I believe maybe some of you in the comments disagree with the legitimacy of it, or it was Indy that said something like, I doubt the legitimacy of this, or whatever. But anyways, right, for the sake of this, let's just say Goering did make that claim that the Luftwaffe could handle Dunkirk. The ground forces did not need to focus on eliminating the people, the British and French at Dunkirk. So we say that's true. But now we also look at this. Goering doesn't seem... Perhaps he was a great fighter pilot in World War I. Does not seem to be so sharp anymore in terms of modern war. It's like, I mean, that seems pretty obvious, right? Going for the shipping, forcing the RAF to come to you, or forcing the RAF to abandon their supply lines in the channel, the English channel. Like, that is a massive propaganda hit if you force them to do that, right? You force them to fight. They come to you over the English channel. You can have a better chance at winning the dogfights, okay? Or if they just refuse and they're like, no, we're going to keep our forces, our airplanes for the time being over England, that is going to be a massive political, military reputation hit to Churchill's government, if they are not protecting the shipping in the English Channel, right? So Goering, you're stupid.
They have reached their intended strength for operations against southern England and the Midlands, with 1,200 medium bombers, 280 dive bombers, 760 single-engine fighters, 220 twin-engine fighters, 50 long-range reconnaissance aircraft, and 90 short-range recon ones. Luftwaffe 5 in Norway, with 130 medium bombers, 30 twin-engine fighters, and 30 long-range
my brain just kind of turns off whenever they start, whenever this kind of information starts showing up in videos where they're just giving numbers and listing off, whatever that is they are. This happens also when they go into, the division details on battles. I just zone out. Because I just don't care. This kind of information to me is just, unimportant. Getting this nitty gritty with the things available, I think is kind of pointless to what is essentially what you're trying to educate on here.
Reconnaissance aircraft will have an indirect influence on the channel action because it will force the British to keep units in the north. And the German planes are effective this week. When
you could get the same point across with just the German Air Force had long range capabilities or whatever in Norway that forced the British to keep divert assets to the north. Something like that. Without going into they had 60 twin range bombers or whatever. Like, eh, eh.
9 British Bolton Paul Defiants go into action the 19th. German Messerschmitt Bf-109s shoot down 6 of them. But what about peace between Germany and Britain? Can that happen? Martin Gilbert writes that on the 19th, Hitler expounds on Churchill's rejection of peace in a Berlin speech. If the struggle continues, it can only end in annihilation for one of us. Mr. Churchill thinks it will be Germany. I know it will be Britain. I am not the vanquished begging for mercy. I speak as a victor. I can see no reason why this war must go on. We should like to avert the sacrifices that claim millions. Mr. Churchill may one day brush aside this statement of mine by saying that it is merely born of fear and doubts of victory. In this case, I shall have relieved my conscience of the things to come. It isn't just Churchill, though. American President Franklin Roosevelt is also dismissive of Hitler's offer, saying there is only one way to deal with a totalitarian country, by resistance, not appeasement. He signs the Two-Ocean Navy Expansion Act to increase American naval strength in both the Atlantic and Pacific. The U.S. has, at the moment, 358 warships in service and is building 130. This act provides for 7 more battleships, 18 aircraft carriers, 27 cruisers, 42 submarines, and 115 destroyers.
Yeah, see, this is actually where I think getting into the numbers here is good, right? Because, and now, of course, not everyone is going to have an understanding as to the scale of what this all means, right? But it's right. It's not getting too into the details here. It's very broad. It's like 7 battleships, 18 cruisers. We're not being told what class of cruiser, what class of aircraft carrier, or what battleship class. You know, it's just aircraft. That's this good. The airplane stuff earlier, not good.
Although only Britain was now at war with Germany, a sense of global conflict pervaded the nations of the Western world. The closing of the Burma Road and the Two-Ocean Navy Expansion Act were clear signs of this. The British want to bring the war back to mainland Europe, even if only on a small scale. On July 1st, Churchill's cabinet agrees to a proposal to combine Section D, the sabotage and propaganda arm of the Secret Intelligence Service, with a guerrilla research department into an organization to run sabotage and other subversive activity in Germany, German-controlled, or even neutral nations. This is the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, which officially forms the 20th. Its motto and its mission are soon coined by Churchill when he tells its first boss, Hugh Dalton, "Set Europe ablaze." Also on the 14th, British commandos launch Operation Ambassador against German-occupied Guernsey. 469 Germans are stationed there. The operation does a few demolitions, but 1 commando drowns and 2 are taken prisoner, and Churchill calls it a fiasco.
Yeah.
The British do have a victory at sea this week, the 19th, as British and Australian ships defeat the Italians at the Battle of Cape Spada, sinking an Italian light cruiser. Though a day earlier, the Vichy French Air Force bombs British Gibraltar in response for the British attack on the French fleet at Mers el-Kabir a couple weeks ago. And a naval note I didn't mention last week. The German commerce raider Comet made its way into the North Pacific by an unusual route, the Northeast Passage along the Arctic Ocean and the seas north of Norway, Finland, and the Soviet Union. There is something else going on this week concerning the Soviet Union. This week are the elections in the Baltics, and yes, I mean those quotes. Last month, the Soviet Union occupied...
What do you mean? They're totally fair and free elections. Stalin's not doing anything wrong.
Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, sending hundreds of thousands of Red Army troops across...
It's fine. They're ensuring the legitimacy of the election.
...across the borders. And now, after the legitimate governments of those countries have been toppled, people's parliaments are created by elections the 14th and 15th. The electoral laws of those nations, however, have been amended illegally, and worded in such a way that only communists or their allies are allowed to run for office.
It's just because the people want people unanimously decided totally that it's only the commies that should run.
The election results are fabricated anyhow, and apparently appear in foreign newspapers 24 hours before the polls even close.
Oh.
Tomorrow,
Oof.
21st, these people's parliaments will meet, and they will have but one item on their agendas, a motion to join the Soviet Union. The motions will carry unanimously. The official Soviet Union story will be that the three nations carried out socialist revolutions and made voluntary requests to join the USSR. And here are some notes to end the week. In the U.S., during the Democratic Party National Convention in Chicago, July 15th through 18th, Franklin Roosevelt is nominated for president for the third time against very little opposition. Henry Wallace is his running mate. And in Britain, General Alan Brooke replaces Edmund Ironside as commander of the Home Forces. He will now be in charge of anti-invasion preparations. And on the 19th in Berlin, Adolf Hitler promotes 12 generals to the rank of Generalfeldmarschall, Field Marshal. Hermann Goering is promoted to a rank created just for him,
Ooh, special boy.
Reichsmarschall. And the week comes to an end with
I do love this picture though. Goering's the only one in white. He is so fucking extra.
a German directive to invade Britain, a British department to wage subversive war on the continent, and new governments in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. It's interesting to see some of the spin on events of this war, and I don't mean just back then with like the Soviet version of what happened in the Baltic states.
What do you mean the Soviet version? It's the true version.
I mean stuff people write in now about those events, mostly because I suspect they think of their guys as the good guys, and good guys don't do bad things.
Of course.
For example, several British people wrote in about the British invasion of Iceland that no, it wasn't an invasion, it was just an occupation, as if there's a difference when you send in military forces to seize the infrastructure of a neutral nation and take its territory for your own use. Someone also wrote in that no, the Soviets didn't want to take over Finland. They just sent in their army because they wanted to put in a new government and make sure it was accepted.
What do you think take over means?
Which is taking over a country. I imagine that person might be thinking now that the Soviets are not taking over the Baltics, just sending in their army to install new governments. But
Sending in the army to ensure fair and free elections, of course, Indy, come on.
whatever your side is, this is war. And in wars, sometimes good guys do bad things, and bad guys do good things. And Britain invaded Iceland. And the Soviet Union invaded Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Though it didn't work out for them in Finland. If you missed our week-by-week coverage of...
I love how Indy covers this stuff. I love it. And that was week 47 of World War II, July 20th, 1940. Good people on both sides. Hitler's peace offer to the Allies. It was a good episode. I have nothing more to say. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.